Welcome to The Explainer. So, have you ever wondered how an ancient faith can completely reinvent itself? Today, we're diving into the incredible story of how Taiwanese Buddhism went from being on the brink of collapse to becoming a vibrant global force, all starting around 1949.
You know, this quote from Master Hsing Yun is just so powerful. It's not just a nice phrase, it's a vow made with flesh and blood. When he got to Taiwan, he didn't just see a religion in decline, he saw a spiritual desert. And he pledged his entire being to bringing it back to life. That's the kind of intense commitment we're talking about here.
Okay, so to really get what a big deal this revival was, we first have to understand what they were up against. Why was it actually considered a desert? Well, a really telling sign of this desert was right there in the temples themselves. Seriously, just imagine walking into what was supposed to be a Buddhist temple back in 1949. You'd look up at the main altar and probably find yourself asking, well, who is that sitting next to the Buddha?
And the answer is pretty wild. It wasn't other Buddhas or bodhisattvas, not at all. Instead, you'd find Taoist gods, local folk heroes, even sea goddesses. I mean, the lines were so blurred that people were making animal sacrifices, which is a huge no-no in Buddhism, right there in the temples. This wasn't just a little confusion, it was a full-blown identity crisis.
So that whole blending of beliefs, that was really just the tip of the iceberg. It was a symptom of a much, much deeper crisis. And the reformers who arrived, they saw it right away. They diagnosed a few core problems that were just holding everything back.
All right, so let's break this down. First, you've got that syncretism we just mentioned. Then there was the legacy from Japanese colonial rule, which meant a lot of the clergy didn't follow the traditional rules. Some were even married. And on top of that, there was this massive education gap. Hardly anyone was actually qualified to teach pure Buddhist doctrine. And to top it all off, it was often laypeople, not monks, running the temples, and they were treating them more like businesses than places of worship. It was, well, a perfect storm.
And this chart, wow, it really drives home the culture shock, doesn't it? On one side, you have the mainland tradition, celibate, highly educated monks leading the way. And on the other, the reality in Taiwan, married clergy, temples run by lay managers, and a focus on folk rituals. You got to imagine, for the monks arriving from the mainland, it must have felt like landing on a completely different planet.
But here's the thing. Faced with this absolute mess, the reformers didn't just throw their hands up in despair. Nope, they rolled up their sleeves and came up with a clear, really systematic plan for a total revival.
So how'd they do it? Their plan was basically a brilliant three-part strategy. First, deal with the government. Get them to stop occupying temples and just treat Buddhism fairly. Second, clean house from the inside. They needed to reform the big Buddhist associations to make them actually effective. And third, and this was the real game changer, they had to educate a whole new generation of monks and nuns from the ground up. It was honestly a masterclass in how to turn an institution around.
Okay, but, a plan is just a piece of paper, right? It all comes down to the execution. And this is where the story gets really incredible. It was this amazing team effort between the new clergy and a whole bunch of passionate regular believers who were just hungry for something real.
And the speed at which things started to change is just mind-blowing. I mean, look at this timeline. In just 6 years, that's nothing. They went from starting the very first academies, to bringing back formal ordination, to kicking off a youth movement, and even getting Buddhist teachings out on the radio. They were literally building a new foundation in real time.
And it wasn't just the airwaves. The printing press became this huge battlefield of ideas. Think about it. More than 100 different Buddhist magazines and journals popped up. It created this vibrant public space where they could debate the reforms, share new ideas, and really build a new intellectual backbone for the whole movement.
This chart, to me, shows maybe the most radical shift of all. Just look at the difference. Before 1949, if you wanted to experience Buddhism, you pretty much had to go to a temple. It was all about rituals inside four walls. But after the reforms, it just exploded outward. This was a very deliberate choice to go from this closed-off, ritual-based religion to a faith that was open, engaged, and using every modern tool it could to reach people.
So, after all that incredible energy, all that strategy, what was the result? Well, that Buddhist desert that Master Hsing Yun had promised to cultivate with his own flesh and blood, it really, truly began to bloom.
Yeah, you can basically think of this table as the reform movement's report card. So, that lack of education, check. Solved with over 20 new academies. Lacks discipline? Check. Fixed by bringing back the formal, rigorous ordination ceremonies. And that terrible public image? totally transformed. They went from being seen as superstitious to a respected social and cultural force. I mean, they aced every single test.
And the historian Hao Hong has a great word for this. He calls it a rupture. This wasn't some slow, gradual change. It was a sharp, clean break. They made a conscious choice to cut ties with that mixed-up, relaxed style they inherited from the colonial era and deliberately reconnect with the deeper, more scholarly traditions of Chinese Buddhism. We're talking about a fundamental reshaping of the island's entire spiritual DNA.
So that brings us back to our opening question. How does a timeless faith reinvent itself for modern times? Well, the story of Taiwanese Buddhism gives us a pretty powerful blueprint. It shows us it's not about throwing away tradition. It's about getting back to its purest roots, while at the same time having the courage to embrace the tools of the modern world, education, media, and getting out into the community. It's really an amazing story that proves that with a clear vision and a ton of dedication, even the most barren desert can be made to bloom.